all I knew as I was building my career is that I wanted to do something different. Every time I did something, loved it, got super passionate about it, did it for 2-3 years, and then thought, I just want to do something different. I want to learn something different. And I just knew that that's not for me. I just wanted to do something different. So if you're 23 and this is what's going through your mind, I think being an entrepreneur is probably the job. You can be in different industries. You just have to study them deeply and become an expert, which is definitely doable. And you get to do different jobs every day and really every 6 months, very much a different job. So you constantly get to grow and learn with your position.
So welcome to this week's episode of Leaders on a Mission, where I'm joined by inspiring leaders driven by the impact of creating a healthy and sustainable world. Now, in today's episode, I'm joined by Shely Aronov, CEO and founder of InnerPlant. InnerPlant are an innovative AgTech company, really challenging the paradigm of crop protection as we know it. But Shely, it's wonderful to have you on today, and thanks so much for your time coming on the show.
Thank you, Simon. Great being here.
Now, tell me, did I get that right? Am I right in that? It's really your business is about creating a paradigm and an option for crop protection as we know it, right?
Yeah, I did find it different when you call it crop protection, but I like it. Why not? Crop protection is definitely a big part of it, and we work on pathogens first, so that seems aligned. Yeah, the idea is remove the inefficiencies and guessing of agriculture by providing better data directly from plants.
But we're going to discuss loads about that, and I love the idea and what your vision and the mission is. But before we get to that, I just wanted to start, because it always has to start from somewhere. So I'm really interested, for you and some of, I suppose, the early upbringing, but particularly some of those key forces that help shape and be some of the main influences for you in your life.
I would guess, let's think through my influences and my journey. So I'm Israeli, and that's a big part of my being and my, the way I am. And honestly, a big part of how I am as a leader. So I would think through one of the first impacts on me is really the army. And in Israel, everyone goes to the army. So I went to the army at 18 for 2 years. I was in a combat support role. So we're monitoring the Gaza Strip for infiltrations at night, which to anyone outside of Israel sounds probably super crazy. It's not that crazy. And then I went on to become a team lead. So I had about 9 soldiers at 19. I think that's just a great experience. That's my guess is a lot of Israelis come out with this inspirations to be entrepreneurs because of the upbringing, the way that the country's, probably not that safe, or it doesn't feel that safe for most normal people. It's just safe for us. And also that you get this experience of being a leader in the army and learning about leadership, responsibility, everything on your shoulder, taking care of people, camaraderie. It's a huge aspect of the military, and also making decisions. I think that's probably the thing that shaped me the most, even though it was 2 years. And then I think the other thing that maybe this will help some other budding entrepreneurs out there that are not sure that this is what they want to do in life yet, is all I knew as I was building my career is that I wanted to do something different. This was just a chain of every time I did something, loved it, got super passionate about it, did it for 2-3 years, and then thought, I just want to do something different. I want to learn something different. And it's obviously not the easiest thing to then build a resume with. So graduated from business school at Stanford, and yet again, at that point would have been my 3rd job. And the advice is just find something, find the theme for your resume. And I just knew that that's not for me. I just wanted to do something different. Literally, when people ask me, what do you want to do next? The answer was something different than what I did before. So if you're 23 and this is what's going through your mind, I think being an entrepreneur is probably the job. Obviously not one that you can just find online. So you have to find your path to it, but it's different. You can be in different industries. You just have to study them deeply and become an expert, which is definitely doable. And I'm a big believer that there's a lot of advantages in being an outsider, but you have to put in the work. And you get to do different jobs every day, and really every 6 months, very much a different job. So you constantly get to grow and learn with your position.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me, did you leave Israel to go to Stanford? Was that what took you to? It did. Okay.
Although randomly, so I did. I applied for business schools when I was 24. By the time I got in, this whole thing takes about 2 years from beginning to start of the program. I knew I was going to leave. And then someone showed up into my life, like literally someone in my building where I was working, and offered me a different job in Colombia, the country. And it was the opportunity to set up a marine construction subsidiary as part of a World Bank funded project, the $320 million project, I believe, to build a sewage system for the city. Because before that, all of the sewage would just go into a lake. That was essentially where all the poor people lived. And that was just the way it was. So this was constructing the whole infrastructure of the sewage, and then taking the water to treatment facilities and then back to the ocean. And I said, sure. And that's another, I think a lot of people are looking at me like, what are you doing? You don't know anything about this. I was an engineer, but not really an industrial engineer, not the kind of engineer you need for this. And it was a great experience. And it was just before business school. So I basically detoured, and instead of going directly to Stanford, I went to Cartagena, Colombia, spent 8 months, and then went from there directly to Stanford.
Amazing. So you kind of strike me as the kind of person that feels, as a CEO, you can drop into any industry and find a way of solving a problem, managing, leading a team, and coming through it, right?
That is my playbook. Now, whether it's everyone's playbook, I don't know, but I can give you all the advantages. If you're coming into a new space, you have no biases, and the biases are a huge problem. Like in our industry, in agriculture, literally everyone's just living in 1996, which is when the first herbicide-tolerant soybeans were launched. And in their world, nothing's changed. But obviously, the world's completely different. At that day, innovation stopped and R&D stopped. So everything stopped with it. And now we're bringing new life into this industry. If you're coming in from the outside, all you look at is the data. And you're thinking, well, I mean, this makes no sense. There's all these problems here and there. And you can see that this opportunity is opening up, but no one inside the industry can see it. I will say you have to spend the time. So there's no excuses for not doing research, not reading a lot, talking to your customers, talking to your potential partners, build bridges into the industry, become an expert. And it takes about 2 years. If you do this intensely, it's going to take about 2 years. By the end of 2 years, people that I was working with were telling me, I know what they know. I just still didn't have their biases. I'm 4.5 years in. I probably have some biases now. The other thing that I like about being an outsider is I don't get in the way of everyone that's working with me. So my co-founder is a molecular biologist. My other co-founder is an ecophysiologist that does all of the detection work. I know nothing about what they do. I don't even attempt to understand what they do. I mean, if you heard me talk about it, you'd think I know, but I don't know. And I think it's a good thing because it was never, I'm not a micromanager. What I'm looking for in my team is great people that I trust. And trust takes time to build. 9 months. That's my thing. I was looking back. After I hire an executive, within 9 months, I know if I can completely give them all of the work and not look over their shoulder ever again, or maybe it's not working out, right? That should be the answer. It takes about 9 months for executives. I think obviously not for every position. And then I do my thing and then they do their thing. And that's a way to get a lot more work done. So if you're okay being that kind of leader and you can find people and build that trust, you're going to get better results by not micromanaging and trying to get into other domains. And if you really cannot get into those domains because it's deep tech and you're not a scientist, it makes it easier to learn that. But now I can do it in things that I used to own. Like I finally don't have to do any of the IP work in my company. And I'm very happy to not do it anymore. Never loved it, had to do it, right? But I learned that from the beginning.
You know, when you said about doing something different, it was always about, I need to do something different. Was there always a mission attached to that? Or did that come a little bit later?
That came later. Initially, I just jumped over opportunities when they arrived. And then I think the first time I really made a decision about what I'm going to do next was post-business school. I started a food brand hummus brand, Israeli style hummus, selling to supermarkets over the West Coast. And I did that because of two things. One, I love food. It was 2011, so it wasn't a great year to transition careers again. If you remember, this was really when things started to come out of the 2008 crisis. I wanted to take a little bit of money and make it into more money because I didn't have the confidence to do something bigger. And that was a big part of it. So I went for something that felt safe. I did that for 4.5 years. I regret it. Everyone that knows me knows it. I regret it. Not that I started it, because that experience was valuable. Starting something from scratch.
What did you regret?
Spending that much time. I should have left probably after 3 years, even though 4.5 was a decent amount of time to spend on it. But after 3 years, the writing was on the wall, which is, this is going to be a lifestyle business. And if I keep tracking, I'll get it to whatever, from 1 million to 3 to 5 million revenues. But it's never going to be more than that. And that is not what I want. That was when I understood that, to me, the impact has to be there. And also not just the impact in the sense of environmental impact, but the impact in the sense of scale. So I have an allergy, literally, to anything that is not about scale. I just want to build solutions that can be implemented on hundreds of millions of acres, because I believe that this is how we move the needle. And this is how you build a good business with VC backing, which we have, right? Once you start taking venture capital, you need to know the business you're building. It's a scale business. That happened later, and I would say InnerPlant was the first time that became part of my journey.
No, it sounds like the journey with the hummus business stood you in great stead, right? You learned some valuable lessons from that, even if you did stay there a little bit longer than you would have hoped.
You always regret staying a little bit too long. That's what I've heard.
Yeah, absolutely. But I know with InnerPlant, but I suppose the mission as well. Tell me the story about how it all started.
It started with a biosensor. My father-in-law was a professor. He retired actually since, but he was a professor at Tel Aviv University. He came to visit us when I decided I'm going to start my next thing. And he said, I figured out how to communicate with plants. And I thought, wow, this is really intuitive. If it works, maybe it's got a space in the world. And then a few things happened after that. So one, I saw the biosensor, and it was a very novel way of making a biosensor, completely not commercially viable. And I started talking to farmers. From day one, just went out, not the farmers I would end up serving, started with some farmers in Israel because I spent the summer there studying about this. Their feedback is very clear. One, when you tell them, hey, I have this method of enabling plants to tell you what they're feeling, is that interesting? And they're super excited. Like, of course, the plants hold all the knowledge if you have a way to get it out of there. But then spend more time going to larger farmers once I understood that this is the market we're going to target. And it's funny, 4.5 years, feedback the same. Everything we've built was for that. No changes to my operation, no additional work, scalable, affordable. So that was the driver of what technology we have to actually build. And I went back to, at that point, I had my co-founder, Rod, and I said, well, it's got to be optical, and we have to see it from space, because I don't believe that drones are going to be very applicable in large-scale ag.
Why? Why, by the way, just before you move on?
Cost and use. It's too expensive, and you need to have someone in the field. The battery life of the drone is too short. So one of my favorite anecdotes for that, and if you ask any large farmer, they'll tell you this. A farmer with 50,000 acres told me, Shely, I need to fly the drone for straight 18 days to cover my field once. And that's the part that I think a lot of entrepreneurs kind of fly over. When something is technically maybe viable, right? You can make the solution, but it's not the way that it's going to be implemented at scale. So you're going to find your first customers that love to try different things, and they'll do it, and they'll have a dedicated person, and they'll go and experiment. And once you go through those first, tens of customers in farming, you're not going to get to main scale, because that's not the way that they want to do things. Satellites, on the other hand, I mean, they do everything on their own. The farmers don't have to interact. The cost is incredibly low per image. And the reality is that when you get to our stage, which is looking into commercialization, then it's not so much is it technically feasible. The early, easy questions you get asked, it's how cheap can you make it? How reliable? Can I get an image a day? Can I get 5 images a day? The bar is always going to be higher. And if your beginning is like, oh, it's really expensive and hard to operate, then you're not going to get there. And then going back to the story, Rod said, well, there's 3 ways I can make plants optically signal. We can make them fluoresce, which is what we're doing. We can do bioluminescence, which is making them glow. And we can do pigmentation. We can change their colors. And fluorescence was by far the better method because you can't see it by eye. So that was very important to us. You can also, it's really quick. It takes about 2 days. Everything else is slower. And you can see it from space. And that's where we found Ari, our last co-founder, and we understood, okay, this is the method to see it from space. And then everything else in the company was driven by that feedback from the customers. And we kept checking in with them because we wanted to make sure that what we built worked for them. And at some point, 2 years in, we started checking with the large partners to make sure that it fits with them as well, because we sell through channel. And that's when the seed companies came on board and deer came on board and salad companies came on board. And we kept validating the same feedback.
Got it. So you found a way to enable plants to communicate with each other. And by communicate each other, we're talking about in terms of things like their stress levels. Am I right in thinking that?
What we do exactly is we tap into the plant's immune system reactions to stress. When the plant is attacked by, let's say, fungus, and that is our first product, but anything, it will start reacting to protect itself. So basically what it does is if it feels that there's fungus on a leaf, it's going to shut down that leaf. And that it's done through a gene expression. It's literally changing its DNA in order to shut down the leaf so that the fungus will die and it won't infect the rest of the plant. We know those reactions because they've been studied for a long time. What we do is we attach a fluorescent protein to that reaction. So when the plant is reacting to the stress, it also is producing a fluorescent protein, and that creates an optical signal that we can see from equipment, not by eye. It's a new light, essentially.
Got it. Okay. And so it's like a real-time guidance to farmers to take action right there, right now.
Exactly. Yeah. Because everything in farming right now is models and guesses, but the reality is we don't know. And some things we don't know a little, meaning we don't know the right timing for nitrogen deficiency. So the problem with nitrogen products is that you can see yellow leaves, but that means that the plant has been stressed for a while. And what you want is early detection. With fungus, you can't find it at all. Like, it's so invisible, right? The only thing you can find is lesions on a leaf, and that's going to be many, many weeks after the fact. And the fungus is everywhere. So the idea is, can you find specific stresses early? And that's the holy grail. Our signals come up in 2 days from the initial stress. That is probably the most compelling sentence that I have to offer to this industry. I don't think that most people get it, but I can tell you now that is the sentence more than anything else.
Amazing. Okay, I love it. It really seems like a new frontier in terms of solution. And I suppose when we were chatting about this, I never realized this as well. But I think you make reference to like 30% of chemical pesticides that are used at the moment. There's overuse, they're just wasted, as it were. And something like 20% of harvests are lost to pathogens. And I was really surprised looking at those. You
thought it was better. Yeah. People think that agriculture is like a smart home. It's kind of funny from where I sit because I know enough. But my recommendation to people that think that is just go see a farm. And then you try to guess where the disease is, right? It's massive, massive natural environments. The numbers are, there's so many facets, by the way. So one, we lose about, I want to say 20% of our crops to pathogens. That's actually in more developed agriculture. The UN just published a report that around the globe, in general, 40% lost to pathogens. The first time I was quoting these UN reports, it was in 2011. It was 25% back then. So it's getting way worse. And the reason is climate change is evolving how pathogens react. And they're getting smarter and better and moving faster. And that's the reason that we're suffering more damage. And that's not going to stop anytime soon. So we got to get smarter about identifying them early. In addition to that, fertilizers are overapplied anywhere from 30 to 50%. Pesticides, this data is a little bit more opaque, but some of the stuff we've seen, 50 to 75% of pesticides are misapplied, meaning You applied them, but you didn't get any kind of positive ROI from that application. And again, it all goes back to the same thing. Why do we over apply fertilizers? Because we don't know. And the number one thing that plants need to be healthy is nitrogen. So you're going to give them nitrogen. And you want to be on the higher end versus the lower end of that equation. And ideally, it'd be exactly where the plants need it, but we're not. We have no vague idea. So everything's applied in excess.
Yeah, amazing. So tell me a little bit about, just so I can clarify, the business case for the farmer. How's it going to work for the farmer? What do they need to do? And what are the benefits going to be?
Yeah, that's a weirdly interesting question. I'll tell you why. So one, what do they have to do? As far as I'm concerned, ideally nothing. Remember from the feedback, no changes to my operation, no additional work. From our research, the reason the farmers don't adopt something is because it's not seamless. Every shortcut you take as a company is basically a place where you say the farmers will figure it out, right? They'll use the tool. They'll take the measurements or whatever. None of that. So it has to be completely seamless. And for that, we're building this ecosystem approach. Everything about InnerPlant, more than the deep tech, is really an ecosystem play, which is complicated, very complicated. But by doing that, you can bring into the solutions all the different partners. And those partners together are developing something that for farmers will feel seamless. And what do I mean by that? I mean, our technology is embedded into seeds through seed partners. And we have Murtec on board, which is the number one independent germplasm provider in the US. And one more partner, actually, that we can't disclose yet. So the idea is when the farmers plant their seeds, the technology is in there. They don't have to do anything different. That data is going to start to be emitted. Second, we brought in a satellite companies, and the first one was Cellogic, and we're launching a dedicated payload in October. Once the seeds are growing, the plants are out there, we can collect that data from satellite imagery. The farmers don't have to do anything different. And then we brought in John Deere because we want to take action. And John Deere has something called See and Spray, which is essentially sensors and cameras that are making the sprayers smart versus the dumb sprayers of the past. So they can really look into the field and take action on the plant level. We're adapting those sensors and cameras to be able to see our signals. So once that information comes from the satellite and you know where the infestation is, well, then you can send the equipment. The equipment knows how to take action in the field. And next, soon, we're going to announce a chemistry company that's joining the mix, because you need to know what to apply. Whether it's a chemical or a biological, you need to know what is the right prescription in order to take care of the problem. When the farmers see at the end of it is in their data platforms, all of that information coming together as a prescription and the question, do you want to go out to the field or not? And that's it. And the calculation of the ROI on the other side of it so that they understand the value. So number one, completely seamless for the farmers. On the value proposition, that's the tricky question. So our number one goal is to help them increase yields. There's not enough acres that are treated properly for fungal stress in the US. Because farmers don't know when to apply. It's either in advance, proactively, or not at all. We want to target exactly where the location of the infestation is and do something about it. So that's going to help them increase yields while using a small amount of chemical. That's on the cost side. But I fundamentally believe that the thing that the farmers really want and will keep them very engaged with the system is peace of mind. Our goal more than anything is to reduce the risk of farming, because farming is super risky, and give them the peace of mind that they know where the plants are sick, or on the other days, they just know that the plants are fine and they don't need any more attention. That to me is what will drive the stickiness of the system more than calculating yields every day.
It's more the going to bed and sleeping well at night.
I very much believe in it. I think people in agriculture believe in it too. Sometimes investors have a harder time figuring that one out because they're used to thinking in kind of the same way I started by saying people think that a farm is like a smart home. If you have a completely controlled environment that you made as a human, then you want to focus on the margins. That's not what biology and agriculture is.
Fascinating. What a great idea, solution, business that you've put together. Thank you. So tell me, you must be getting ready to do something else now, right? Because you've been doing this for a few years now. You've got it out in the fields, but what's the dream? Tell me where are you now in terms of scale? What are you doing currently, and Tell me a little bit about the future and what that looks like for you.
We are now getting ready to roll out into fields next year. So with deep tech, maybe the first few years are really frustrating in that sense because you're still building something and it's going to take years to build that something. Now, there's progress in the lab, but until you actually get it into the hands of farmers. And we're finally at that cusp of that. And also with the ecosystem getting established, meaning that we have partners joining and more partners, there's momentum there. So it's getting much easier to get the next partner on board. In reality, these are our customers, right? Our end customer is the farmer, but we sell through the channel partners. So getting deeper into those relationships, establishing them, we're basically at the cusp of commercialization. And I'm super excited about the next few years, right? When we start to scale it until we get to, I don't know, a few million acres. Maybe at that point, I'll say, okay, I've done my thing. And someone else can take it from 5 million to 100 million. But honestly, this company just never bores me. There's always something more. And I think the vision can just continue to grow. There's so many elements. Everything we spoke about until now is just what do you do on the farm? But if you think about data like this, it's all about stress. And stress is all about yields and predictions. There's a lot of value downstream. And then you have additional crops. You can expand into crops that maybe are not even genetically engineered today, where you have those benefits from farmers around the world that are not in the best markets, right? There's so many opportunities to then expand the vision. I don't know. Maybe this is it for me. It's hard to say.
I reckon the challenge for you is when to get those ideas and go, hold on, we need to come back to that in a while. Let's just focus on this first of all, right? So.
Number one advice. So the number one was know your customer, right? Listen to your customer. Number two, be focused. And maybe be focused is even more important, but my specialty is saying no. And I say no often. And it's heartbreaking, right? You want to do the next thing always. And with deep tech, maybe even more painful because it takes 2 years to make the next thing. Even now that everything's established, when we start corn, it takes us 2 years. It's always hard to say no, but you can't boil the ocean as a startup. So
yeah, the resources just don't allow for it, do they? That's the problem.
Yeah. And the reality is that we've moved so fast on making our soybean product. And when we looked into why that happened, there's so many reasons, like developing new protocols and using new technologies and many, many reasons. But the one that we ended up deciding that is probably the biggest reason is focus. We made one thing first, and that helped us make that thing fast.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so you're looking very much at the row crops, the big kind of acreage, as it were. So like corn and soy and, what else, within the sphere?
For now, honestly, I'm interested in soy and corn. And then after that, maybe wheat and rice. And those are not currently genetically engineered crops. So it's a bigger leap forward. So step one is getting into crops that are already in that format, or the industry is established and are essentially consumed by animals and jet fuel. And once we do that and establish a good reason of why this exists, and I think the consumers need to, at the end of the day, understand why it exists and want it to exist, then we can expand into other crops. Yeah.
But clearly, like corn and soy internationally, globally, are of interest, right? No doubt.
So there's about 220 million acres of soybeans and I want to say 180 million acres of corn, maybe 200.
Right, great. Incredible. Absolutely. Tell me a little bit about, when you think about the hurdles and the challenges from this point, what do you see as the real challenges to overcome?
It's interesting. We just spoke about it. 1, focus. 2, scaling and execution. So scaling and execution, now we're moving out of the lab and the greenhouses into actually deploying the solution. And it's a complicated solution. So it means that we have to accelerate execution. And I tell the team basically every week now we know that this works technically, and we know that people want it, but we can still ruin it if we don't execute well, and that will break my heart. It's going to be way harder than if we lost it in the beginning. But it's a different muscle and different skill set. So now building all of those elements and then integrating them into the R&D so they can all properly communicate, because everything is interconnected. That's the next challenge for us. And then the other one is losing focus because we want to increase the scope now. But if we increase the scope, then I constantly think through this. We want to do a much larger raise soon. what does that mean? That means we can do more, but how do we do more and then still keep the focus? And I know there's a way, right? But you got to structure your team in a certain way so that some people are essentially sheltered from all of that so they can keep focus. And some people see the full picture, but everyone knows altogether where we're going, because it's really important that people know where we're going. I don't have the answers to that. That's just the stuff I'm thinking about now.
Well, we'll come back and discuss that with you in a year's time and see where I would have thought talent would have been a big question around that, in terms of building up that capability and the disciplines. And, that must be a difficult challenge when it comes to maintaining what you've got, but then growing out some of that more execution discipline and bringing it all together. That's always a challenging step, isn't it, to make, as it were. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm thinking through right now. There's some people that are good at, someone was telling me this the other week, making the trains leave on time.
Yeah.
So you need some of those people, and then you need to introduce them to the other more creative areas of the business. But honestly, from day one, InnerPlant was set up on, we built something that customers want, and the science is set up to provide them a solution that they want. So they're very accustomed to it, and they're not trying to just do cool science. If anything, they're very deeply focused. So I don't think it's going to be hard to bring that to them. It's just, you got to build that capability, choose the right people.
Tell me, I've got a sense, but let me ask you, what is it like to work in a plant?
AgTech. Okay, it's a tough time you ask me. This is field trials, and we just had our first conference last week on top of that. And our team is phenomenal, incredibly brilliant people and lovely people. And they all do the work of 5 people. Every person does the work of 5 people. And that's a little bit by design. Now, I'm not saying no one works at midnight. Like, that's not how it is. I don't believe in that toxic, Silicon Valley. Oh, I don't sleep at night. Yes, come on. Everyone sleeps at night, and it's okay. We don't have to be embarrassed about it. If you have too many people and not enough projects, that's where you lose your edge as a startup. And I don't think you can actually walk it back. So what you want to have is not enough people and too many projects. And the issue with that is that it's a lot. And I acknowledge that, especially going into field trials where all the scientists are now living in the lab and outside the lab, and the business people are closing deals, and we're essentially making promises, and everyone needs to do all of this together. It's a lot, but it keeps them also happy because it's interesting. If you get to do different things, it's interesting, right? And you're not just gearing into your very narrow expertise every day.
Energetic is what comes to mind. Lots of energy, lots of excitement.
Yeah, I like that. Better than hectic. It's very energetic, and there's momentum. And this is kind of the secret sauce that I don't even know how to explain momentum. All I know, and this is true, when you have it, you know you have it. And when you don't, you'll know you don't. You don't know.
Yeah.
When you have it, it's like this magic spark, and all you want to do is make sure that it doesn't go away. But when you have momentum, it's easier for the team too. Everyone's excited.
Momentum's going to work and looking around, and you can't believe the day's gone. That's
the description.
Yeah, well, it's a fun description. I'm sure you've got a few others, but you know what? I could talk to you all day about this. I know you've got field trials and you're very busy, and I just wanted to say, I really appreciate you coming on. Love the vision, love what you're doing, and just wish you all the very best with things. And thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.